You're standing in a Baghdad museum in 1938, holding a small terracotta jar no bigger than your thumb. Inside it sits a copper rod wrapped in a mysterious iron tube, sealed with bitumen. What did someone believe they needed to preserve inside this vessel 2,000 years ago? I'm Jacob, and I investigate the engineering mysteries history forgot. The first Baghdad Battery wasn't named that until 1938. A German archaeologist named Wilhelm König was cataloging artifacts from Kujut Rabu, a settlement near the city, when he noticed something that didn't fit. The pottery vessels were crude, ordinary looking, but the construction inside told a different story. Each jar contained an iron rod suspended inside a copper tube, the two metals separated by what appeared to be bitumen, an ancient form of asphalt. The top of the jar was sealed with the same material. König had been trained in electrochemistry. He immediately recognized the design. Those two dissimilar metals, separated by an insulating substance, were the foundational components of a galvanic cell. The very same principle that Alessandro Volta would use 1800 years later to invent the electric battery. But here it was, fashioned from common materials buried in the Iraqi desert, dating back to the Parthian period, somewhere between 250 BCE and 640 CE. König published his findings in a German technical journal. The academic world largely ignored him, perhaps because the idea seemed impossible, perhaps because the Second World War was beginning and nobody had time for mysteries. The jars sat in museum storage, forgotten, until an American chemist named Willard Gray picked up the thread in 1966. Gray had read König's old paper. He was curious enough to attempt a reconstruction. Using clay jars and copper and iron salvaged from materials, he filled the vessels with grape juice, an acidic electrolyte. The voltage registered immediately. 0.5 volts per jar, not much power, but measurable, reproducible, real. Here is where the story becomes strange, because here is where engineers begin asking the obvious question: why? A single jar producing half a volt is almost useless, but the ancient builders had found the jars in groups. In 1966, when Gray conducted his experiments, he understood what the original craftsman might have understood. Connect these jars in series, string 5 of them together. You have 2.5 volts flowing through a wire. That is enough to electroplate metal. That is enough to separate copper from ore through electrolysis. That is enough to deposit a thin layer of gold onto silver or bronze, something the ancient world prized above almost everything else. The Baghdad Museum's catalog showed multiple groupings of these jars found together at Kujut Rabu. Not dozens, but enough to suggest intentional organization. Enough to suggest someone had a plan. In 1978, a German electrochemist named Arne Eggebrecht took the theory further. He built a replica battery with 24 jars connected in series, just as an ancient craftsman might have arranged them. He used copper sulfate as an electrolyte, a chemical that was available through natural mineral deposits in Mesopotamia. The device produced over 5 volts of stable current. He then used that current to electroplate a silver statuette with gold. It worked. The coating was thin but even. It lasted hours without significant degradation. The implication was troubling for conventional archaeology. Ancient Iraqis may have possessed functional electrical devices 2 millennia before Europe discovered electromagnetism. But troubling implications do not change what the evidence suggests. In the Baghdad Museum, curators still display several original vessels. You can see them. The copper cylinder is still there, the iron rod still suspended inside, the bitumen seal still intact after 2,000 years, the device still asking its quiet question: what were you used for? Not everyone accepts this narrative. The skeptical case is not without merit. Dr. Paul Craddock, a metallurgist at the British Museum, examined the artifacts closely in 2002. He pointed out that electroplating, while theoretically possible with such a device, left no archaeological trace in Mesopotamia. No artifacts showing the distinctive characteristics of electrically plated metals. No worn tools suggesting an industrial process. No written records describing the technique. The Parthians, who occupied the region when these jars were created, left no clear documentation of electrochemistry. No diagrams, no instructions, no mention in cuneiform or Greek texts, despite both civilizations keeping careful records of technological innovations. This silence is compelling. A civilization advanced enough to create a functional electrochemical cell would likely have left some trace of what they did with it. Unless, of course, they knew exactly what they were doing and kept it secret. Or unless the jars were never meant for electroplating at all. The German archaeologist Göran Henkel examined the distribution of these vessels more carefully. He found them concentrated in a single location at a single time period. Kujut Rabu, in the Parthian era. Not widespread across the ancient world. Not replicated by other civilizations. Not present in Egyptian or Mayan or Chinese archaeological sites. If this technology was useful, why did nobody else invent it? Dr. Robert Feynman, the Nobel Prize-winning physicist, said the Baghdad Battery represents either an inexplicable gap in our understanding of ancient technology or an elaborate modern misinterpretation. The batteries exist. They are real. The copper is real. The iron is real. The engineering principle they embody is undeniable, but the purpose remains theoretical. Experiments like Eggebrecht's show what the jars could do. They do not show what the jars actually did. This distinction matters. The scientific method demands more than possibility. It demands evidence. And evidence is what the desert has not yet surrendered. The jars remain in the Baghdad Museum, assuming they survived the chaos of recent decades. If they did, they are still sitting on their shelves, still sealed with bitumen, still waiting for a question the modern world has not yet learned to ask properly. The real mystery is not whether ancient people could have built these devices. The replications have proven beyond doubt that they could have. The real mystery is why we find this so difficult to believe. The Baghdad Battery sits at the edge of what we think we know about the ancient world, but it is not alone. 30 years after Koenig first held that terracotta jar, archaeologists would find something far more elaborate, buried in the wreck of a ship near the Greek island of Antikythera. A device so intricate, so impossible to explain, that when scientists first examined it, they thought it must be modern. A mechanism of bronze gears and astronomical calculations that would take us 2,000 years to understand. In the next video, we descend into that wreck. We examine the device they pulled from the ocean floor, and we ask a question that might change how you think about the past forever. Thank you for watching.